So when I do public appearances, I get very anxious. I had an anxiety attack. Pretty much I can't post a picture of myself on Twitter without a bunch of people telling me how ugly I am. I'm hesitant to share a lot of myself with the world.
Rachel Zegler, thanks for coming on my show. I sold out years ago and I'm a coward. So you recently starred in the movie Snow White. Tell me, what was it like to play Snow Latina? First of all, Stephen, it was weird. But I did enjoy reimagining the character as a woke Colombian woman who looks like a fish.
That's what happens when you're a bitch, is that nobody likes you. I know it sounds crazy, but that's those are the consequences of your actions. That's life.
You know that feeling when you watch a train wreck in slow motion? That's exactly what's been happening with Rachel Zegler, and honey, it's been absolutely brutal to witness. What started as a Cinderella story, unknown girl gets discovered, lands the lead in Disney's Snow White remake, has turned into something so messy that Disney has literally pretended the entire movie doesn't exist. Let me paint you the picture. After nearly 2 years of hype, controversy, and what can only be described as the most expensive damage control in Disney history, Snow White just vanished. No release date announcement, no trailer drop, no red carpet premiere. Nothing. The movie that was supposed to be Disney Plus's crown jewel has been buried so deep that even Disney employees are pretending they've never heard of it. And it's all because of one person, Rachel Zegler. Now, before you start thinking this is just another case of internet bullies going after a young actress.
Thing is, the internet, when the internet decides that they hate somebody, they hate them. They hate them, and that's it. And I feel like, especially with people like this that have like these types of viewpoints, I don't see her coming back from this at all. I think she is totally cooked with this.
Let me tell you, this goes so much deeper than that. This is about a pattern of behavior that's been building for years, and it finally reached a breaking point that even Disney, with all their money and PR magic, couldn't fix. The beginning of the end. Remember when Rachel first got cast as Snow White? The girl was on top of the world. Spielberg had just discovered her for West Side Story. She was winning awards left and right, and Disney handed her the keys to one of their most beloved properties. She should have been grateful.
We covered woke Snow White, no longer white, snow taupe, snow beige, snow swarthy, snow's not swarthy. Some kind of sediment or sand that is no longer blanc. This young woman just explained the far more egregious changes to the story than the casting of this out-of-place actress.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
This is the central feature of the movie, is that it's a movie about love, and that she is reawoken by love. They're taking the love out of it. No, it's not about Prince Charming and love anymore. It's about what a girl boss she is. Because that's what little girls dream of. They dream of being a girl boss.
Gracious and smart about it. Instead, she decided to tell the world exactly what she thought about the original Snow White, and darling, it was not pretty. In interview after interview, Rachel made it crystal clear that she had zero respect for the 1937 classic. She called it weird and creepy.
So early on, Snow White herself, Rachel Zegler, was riddled with controversy, starting with the fact that she essentially hated Snow White. She called the original story dated and weird and said that this was going to be some sort of modern take. I guess it was going to be like a feminist, like rah-rah, she doesn't need the prince sort of take on Snow White. But I'll just let Rachel describe what she thought of Snow White for you herself.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Dismissed the love story as outdated, and had the absolute audacity to call the prince a stalker. She wasn't just promoting a new version, she was actively trashing the original that millions of people grew up loving. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so, she said with this smirk that just screamed arrogance.
Snow White now has a trailer. It's been playing before, the Wicked movie. If you've gotten the chance to see it, we're going to react to some of it.
You'll be safe from all of us. We're going to need your help.
feel the girl bossification of Snow White. I think we got like 2 seconds of the prince in this trailer, so who knows? Rachel Zegler said in her original sort of PR touring that she was doing on the subject of this film that the prince might be cut totally because he's not even important and he's a stalker anyways. Of course, there's the obvious question, like how are they gonna figure out the kiss and the meeting of the prince and the apparent stalking that he does in the initial film, because a lot of the leftist posturing surrounding Snow White initially was over that non-consensual kiss that exists at the end. How they're gonna sum that up and fix it, I have no idea.
There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. So we didn't do that this time. The internet went absolutely feral. And not in a good way. Fans were livid. Here was this young actress, who owed her entire career to Disney, publicly mocking a beloved classic and acting like she was doing everyone a favor by fixing it. The backlash was swift and brutal, but instead of backing down or clarifying her comments, Rachel doubled down. She kept talking about how the original was extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power, and how her version was going to be about who is the most just and who can become a fantastic leader. She was basically telling fans that everything they loved about Snow White was wrong, and she was here to educate them. The arrogance was breathtaking. The reputation spiral.
So here are 5 reasons why everyone seems to hate Rachel Zegler. Because she was seen as unbecoming for getting the leading role in Snow White, only to often voice how much she hates the original. Second, people said she came across as arrogant when she was asked on the red carpet for Shazam, a Marvel film, why she wanted to be a part of the Marvel universe so bad. She just needed a job.
What made you want to step into this world of DC heroes? I needed a job.
Third, people say she seems very self-serving with this cropped, very viral video.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Fourth, I've seen people criticize her for starring alongside Ansel Elgort in West Side Story and seemingly standing by him during all the absolutely awful allegations that were going on and not condemning that behavior. Fifth, is it just misogyny? Some people say that Hollywood has just continued its tradition of hating on a new young actress. She has a whole hating fan base similar to the Hatha hate.
What happened next was like watching someone set their own career on fire, and then complain about the heat. Rachel's interviews started going viral for all the wrong reasons.
I'm honored. I don't know why I sound so angry right now. I'm honored. Am I a psychopath? No, I've been getting a lot of questions about how do I feel? I feel amazing. We start kind of soon, and I'm just like...
Fans began dissecting every word, every facial expression, every hint of attitude in her responses. And there was a lot of attitude. The girl who was supposed to be Disney's next big star started coming across as entitled, ungrateful, and completely out of touch with the audience she was supposed to win over. Red carpet appearances became exercises in damage control as reporters tried to get her to walk back her comments.
It's the most emotional experience that a person can go through to know that what they're working on is something that has reached a generation of people. And now I'm a part of that legacy to some degree. It's not something I take lightly, and it's just the most emotional experience.
But Rachel wasn't having it. She kept insisting that her version was better, more modern, more relevant. She talked about Snow White learning to come into her own power and becoming a fantastic leader instead of just finding love. Which, fine. But did she have to make it sound like anyone who enjoyed the original story was some kind of backward dinosaur? The worst part? You could see in these interviews that she genuinely believed she was the victim. When asked about the backlash, she'd get this wounded expression and talk about how hard it was to be misunderstood, how much pressure she was under, how lonely it all felt. "It's definitely a lot of pressure," she said in one particularly cringe-worthy moment.
"I'm so sorry."
Rachel, you got time to sign some autographs for us, Rachel? Rachel, please. Rachel, you got time to sign some, Rachel? Maybe on the way out?
But I surround myself with very good people who keep me grounded and try to just stay as true to myself as I possibly can. Staying true to herself. That was the problem right there. Behind the scenes, the real drama. While all this was playing out in public, things behind the scenes were reportedly getting even messier. Word started spreading through Hollywood that Rachel wasn't just difficult in interviews, she was difficult to work with, period. crew members from various productions began whispering about her behavior on set. The stories were always the same: demanding, controlling, constantly clashing with directors and senior staff. She apparently had very specific ideas about how things should be done, and wasn't shy about expressing them, loudly and frequently. Disney tried to manage the situation. They brought in crisis PR teams, tried to limit her media appearances, and hoped the drama would eventually die down. They'd invested too much money and time to just walk away, and they still believed they could salvage both the film and Rachel's career. They were wrong. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, Rachel headed to London for what was supposed to be her redemption arc, starring in Evita on the West End. This was her chance to step away from the Snow White controversy and prove she was a serious actress who could command a live stage with grace and professionalism. What actually happened was a complete catastrophe. From the moment rehearsals started, there were problems. And I'm not talking about normal opening night jitters or creative differences. I'm talking about full-scale meltdowns, walkouts, and chaos that had veteran theater professionals running for the exits. The stories that leaked out of that production were absolutely wild. Rachel allegedly screamed at a lighting operator for missing a cue. She refused to rehearse certain scenes as she didn't like the creative direction. Cast members were walking out mid-rehearsal, and crew members were quitting faster than they could be replaced. One particularly juicy detail that made the rounds? She apparently had screaming matches with the creative team about how her character should be portrayed, insisting on changes that went against decades of theatrical tradition. This wasn't a film set where you could do multiple takes. This was live theater, where everyone needs to work together seamlessly. The environment became so toxic that people started calling it unsustainable. Professional theater people, who've dealt with divas and drama queens for decades, were saying they'd never seen anything like it. And the worst part? All of this was happening in full view of London's tight-knit theater community. Word spreads fast in that world, and it spread like wildfire. Disney's breaking point. Back in Burbank, Disney executives were reportedly having emergency meetings. The Evita disaster wasn't just embarrassing Rachel, it was embarrassing them. They'd stood by her through the Snow White backlash, defended her casting choice, and invested millions in making her their next big star. Now she was making headlines for all the wrong reasons again, and this time it had nothing to do with internet trolls or unfair criticism. This was about professional behavior, or the lack thereof. The breaking point came when Disney realized that every time Rachel's name appeared in the news, it was negative. Every interview clip became a PR nightmare. Every social media post sparked more controversy. She wasn't just a polarizing figure anymore, she was a liability. And that's when the whispers started about pulling the plug on Snow White entirely. The silent cancellation. Here's where the story gets really interesting, because Disney didn't announce they were canceling Snow White. They just stopped talking about it. The release date came and went with zero fanfare. No streaming debut, no announcement, no explanation. The movie that had once been plastered all over Disney's promotional materials suddenly vanished from their website, their social media, their press releases, everywhere. It was like Snow White had never existed. Industry insiders started piecing together what had happened. Disney had quietly scrubbed the film from their internal release calendar and put a hold on all marketing materials. The official word was that they were reassessing the rollout strategy, but everyone knew what that really meant. They were too scared to release it. Think about that for a second. Disney, the company that's weathered every kind of controversy and scandal, was too afraid of the backlash to release a finished movie. They'd rather eat the millions they'd already spent than risk the headlines that would come with platforming Rachel Zegler. The fear wasn't just about box office numbers or streaming metrics. Disney was terrified that releasing Snow White would reignite all the old controversies and create new ones. They were worried about protests, boycotts, and endless negative press cycles that would damage not just this one movie, but the entire Disney brand. So they made the unprecedented decision to bury a major tentpole release rather than deal with the fallout. As if things weren't messy enough, Rachel then decided to sue her own agent for $50 million. The details of the lawsuit are sealed, But the very fact that she's going after the people who are supposed to be managing her career tells you everything you need to know about how chaotic her professional life has become. When an actress starts suing her own representation, it's usually a sign that everything has completely fallen apart. These are the people who are supposed to be guiding her career, helping her navigate the controversies, and finding her work. Now they're enemies in a legal battle that's costing everyone involved a fortune. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as Disney was trying to figure out what to do with Snow White, their lead actress was making headlines for yet another drama-filled lawsuit. It was like she was determined to stay in the news for all the wrong reasons. The industry reaction. Hollywood is a small town, and word travels fast. As the Rachel Zegler situation spiraled out of control, other studios and casting directors started taking notice. Not in a good way. Projects that had been considering her for roles quietly moved in different directions. Brand partnerships that might have been interested suddenly weren't returning calls. The kind of opportunities that should have been flooding in for a young actress with her profile just stopped coming. This wasn't about her talent. Everyone agreed she could sing and act. This was about risk management. In an industry where image is everything and social media can make or break careers overnight, Rachel had become too unpredictable, too volatile, too likely to create problems. Casting directors started having conversations about whether she was worth the headache. Producers began asking if there were safer alternatives. Studio executives wondered if associating with her would create more problems than it solved. The answer, increasingly, was no. The fan exodus. Perhaps the most telling sign of how badly things had gone was the shift in fan sentiment. Early in her career, Rachel had a devoted following of young fans who saw her as a role model and inspiration. They defended her through the initial Snow White backlash, argued with critics on social media, and supported her career at every turn. But as the controversies piled up and the pattern of behavior became clear, even her most dedicated fans started walking away. Social media comment sections that had once been filled with support began turning critical. Fans who had bought tickets to see her in Evita started asking for refunds. The people who should have been her biggest champions were now her biggest critics. "I wanted to like her," became a common refrain. "I really tried to support her, but she made it impossible." This wasn't about internet trolls or organized hate campaigns. These were genuine fans who had become disillusioned with someone they'd once admired. And in today's entertainment landscape, losing your core fanbase is a death sentence. The silence speaks volumes. What's been most striking about this entire situation is who hasn't come to Rachel's defense. In Hollywood, when a young actress faces controversy, there's usually a parade of industry veterans ready to offer support, perspective, and guidance. That hasn't happened here. No A-list directors have stepped forward to praise her work. No major co-stars have posted supportive messages on social media. No industry organizations have offered statements about unfair treatment or rushed to her defense. The silence has been deafening, and in Hollywood, silence is often more telling than any public statement. When nobody wants to associate themselves with you, when nobody's willing to stake their own reputation on defending yours, it's a clear sign that you've crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. The Disney dilemma. For Disney, the Rachel Zegler situation has become a perfect storm of everything they try to avoid. They're dealing with a lead actress who's become more famous for controversy than for her actual work, a finished film they're afraid to release, and a fanbase that's more likely to boycott than buy tickets. The company that built its empire on family-friendly entertainment and feel-good stories now has a Snow White remake that's associated with lawsuits, backstage drama, and public relations disasters. It's the exact opposite of the Disney magic they've spent decades cultivating. The question now is whether they'll ever release the film at all, or if Snow White will become the most expensive movie never seen. Some industry watchers believe Disney might try to quietly edit Rachel out of as much of the film as possible and reshoot key scenes with a different actress. Others think they'll just write off the entire investment and pretend it never happened. Either way, it's an unprecedented situation for a company that usually knows exactly how to handle its talent and protect its brand. The road back? So where does this leave Rachel Zegler? Is there a path back from this level of industry exile, or has she burned too many bridges to ever recover? Hollywood loves a good redemption story, but they usually require three things: genuine accountability, sustained good behavior, and time. Lots of time. So far, Rachel hasn't shown much interest in the first two requirements. Instead of acknowledging her role in the various controversies, she's continued to position herself as a victim of unfair treatment. Instead of laying low and rebuilding relationships behind the scenes, she's stayed active on social media and in legal battles that keep her name in the headlines. The industry is watching to see if she'll eventually realize that her approach isn't working and try a different strategy. But with each passing month of continued drama, the possibility of a comeback becomes more remote. The entertainment business is full of talented people who are also easy to work with. When someone becomes known for being difficult, unprofessional, or unpredictable, there's usually someone equally talented who doesn't come with the baggage. The cautionary tale. What makes the Rachel Zegler story so fascinating and tragic is how completely avoidable it all was. She had everything: talent, opportunity, industry support, and a fanbase ready to champion her career. All she had to do was be gracious, professional, and respectful of the properties and people that were giving her these opportunities. Instead, she chose to bite the hand that fed her, repeatedly and publicly. She turned what should have been a dream career into a cautionary tale about ego, entitlement, and the importance of knowing when to stay quiet. The saddest part is that this isn't really about one bad interview or one difficult production. It's about a pattern of behavior that suggests someone who fundamentally misunderstood how the entertainment industry works and what audiences expect from their stars. In an era where social media amplifies every mistake and the internet never forgets, Rachel Zegler managed to go from Hollywood's next big thing to industry pariah in record time. It's a masterclass in how to destroy a promising career, and it's all been playing out in real time for everyone to see. The question now is whether this story ends with Rachel fading into obscurity, or finding a way to rebuild from the ashes of what could have been. But based on everything that's happened so far, the smart money isn't on a comeback.